Alright, well, you just clicked on an overly long video about the Prisoner of Azkaban, which means that you're already on my side or probably ready to hate me in the comments. Either way, let's do this thing. Let's go. The year is 2004. It's been a year and a half since Chamber of Secrets, and the wildly different Prisoner of Azkaban has just been released on an unsuspecting fan base. The first two films were a bit of a slog to get through because Chris Columbus isn't a very good director. I will forever love him as a writer because he gave us Gremlins and The Goonies. But his two most beloved movies as a director are probably Mrs. Doubtfire and Home Alone. Home Alone was written and produced by John Hughes, who was coming off of just one of the best hot streaks in Hollywood history. Since Chris Columbus was new in his directing career, I would imagine John Hughes would want to be on set a lot for the filming of that movie, which, if so, probably did a good bit to contribute to the quality of that movie. And Mrs. Doubtfire had Robin Williams playing a wacky character in a family comedy. You have to actually be incompetent to make that not work in a movie. So Columbus's Harry Potter movies are not that great as movies, and he really doesn't get great performances from the child actors. Which is particularly galling because supposedly his experience working with child actors is why he was hired instead of Steven Spielberg. Yes, there is a potential timeline where Steven Spielberg directed at least the first Harry Potter film and executive produced all of the others. I wish that we lived in that timeline. Sure, it might mean missing out on Minority Report and AI, but that's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. Oh, and Catch Me If You Can came out in that time period. This got tricky. How did you have time to make 3 movies in like a year and a half? Point being, Warner Brothers, you done goofed. And if Steven Spielberg just decided that he didn't want to make it, well, I'm mad at him. I can't stay mad at him. So the movies were lackluster and a little dull, but they were saved by being pretty faithful adaptations. With a few exceptions. Shockingly, we'll come back to you. Amazing set design. Superb casting. Richard Harris, Maggie Smith, Robbie Coltrane, Alan Rickman, Richard Griffiths, John Hurt, Warwick Davis, Tom Felton, John Cleese, David Bradley, Miriam Margolyes, Jason Isaacs, Robert Hardy, Gemma Jones, and Kenneth Branagh. And 2 of the greatest soundtracks ever made. Fight Me. After that, we were treated to Alfonso Cuarón, and most of us were blown away. Philosopher and Chamber were okay kids' movies, but Azkaban actually felt like a good movie. I saw it 3 times in the theater. I think my mom saw it 5 times because she kept having to take different kids and different kids' friends, but I do know for a fact that she saw it at least once by herself because she just loved it so much. But after a while, I started to notice some cracks. There's one that we all notice immediately because it was about as obvious as walking into an apartment and finding that the carpet is missing. I just looked up a casting director for the first time in my life, and Gina J, you owe us Harry Potter fans an apology for Michael Gambon. Sure, you did give us Gary Oldman and Emma Thompson and Timothy Spall and David Thewlis. Wow, that was actually a lot of really good decisions. Were you drunk when you hired Michael Gambon? Does he have something on you? You can go to the police about that kind of thing. My sister almost cried at Dumbledore's death when she read it in Half-Blood Prince, but then almost cheered when she saw that scene in the movie because she disliked Gambon that much. Hashtag never mind Dumbledore. Over the years, I've cooled on the Harry Potter movies and don't particularly like them. I'm a huge, long-time Harry Potter fan. When I started reading the books, Prisoner of Azkaban was the most recent one. I saw Goblet of Fire, Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, and Deathly Hallows Part 1 all at midnight premieres. My dad and I were at a Styx and Yes concert the night of Part 2's premiere. And after all of that, I don't really care if any of my kids ever see any of the movies. That's how bad it's gotten for me. In fact, I dislike the movies more every time I reread any of the books. After a few years, if it came up in conversation, I would usually say that Chamber of Secrets was probably the best adaptation, even though it was a mediocre movie. And Prisoner of Azkaban was easily the best movie, while probably the worst adaptation. The worst one, period, is Goblet of Fire. That one fills me with a rage that needs to be released at some point. No. People would usually nod in agreement as I gave that ranking, but I now realize that I was wrong. Not about Goblet of Fire. I am right about that. You see, Azkaban probably is the worst adaptation, but it's such a bad adaptation that it's a bad movie. This isn't just a fan mad about things that they changed or left out. If you want a better list of those kinds of grievances, check out Dominic Noble's Lost in Adaptation series on the Harry Potter Octology. Is that even a word? Huh. Regardless, those videos are very good and therapeutic. Now, this movie is such a bad adaptation that if you haven't read the books, it makes no sense. I should have noticed it before. My dad came out of that movie with so many questions. So did my brother. And when he finally read the books this year, he told us all that it made so much more sense now. And that's not how adaptations should work. The book shouldn't be required reading for understanding a movie. You want specifics? I will give you specifics. So many specifics. At its heart, Harry Potter is a mystery. Harry Potter is the boy who lived because Voldemort tried to kill him as a 1-year-old, but the spell ricocheted off of Harry and destroyed Voldemort instead. Then, over 7 books, we slowly learn what happened that night. This book gives a lot of backstory in what is, frankly, an info dump. But Rowling kind of expertly makes us okay with that, because all of the information that we get also answers questions that we've had while reading this book. At the beginning of the story, we learn about escaped convict Sirius Black. Then we learn that he's actually a wizard escaped convict who killed 13 people. Then we learn that he escaped to get to Harry. Then we learn that he was James' best friend and on Dumbledore's side, but he changed to Voldemort's side and betrayed Harry's parents to their death, and now he wants revenge on Harry for defeating the Dark Lord. Then we learn a bunch of things that reveal the truth of what actually happened. Lupin has been a werewolf since he was a child, but Dumbledore let him come to Hogwarts. The Whomping Willow was planted over a tunnel that led to the Shrieking Shack for Lupin to hide in during a full moon. The Shrieking Shack isn't actually haunted. The ghost people heard were Lupin transforming into a werewolf as a kid. Sirius James and Wormtail learned that Lupin was a werewolf and spent 3 years illegally becoming animagi so that as animals they could hang out with Lupin while he was a werewolf. They learned so much about the Hogwarts grounds as animals that they made the Marauders map. I spelled Marauders right the first time. That one usually gives me trouble. Years later, the Potters learned that Voldemort was coming for them and used the Fidelius charm to hide. That's a magic spell that lets you plant a secret, like where you're hiding, into someone. And if they don't tell anyone, then no one can even find out accidentally. Sirius was supposed to be the secret keeper, and everyone thought he was the secret keeper, but at the last minute, he decided it should be Wormtail. He figured that Voldemort would assume that he was the secret keeper, and then if he was captured, Voldemort could torture it out of him. But no one would ever guess that Wormtail would be picked to be the secret keeper, so he was the better candidate. Wormtail then told Voldemort where the Potters were, showing why no one would choose him to be a secret keeper. Sirius, being the only person who knew that Wormtail was responsible, went to kill him for revenge. Wormtail caused an explosion that killed 12 people, cut off his own finger, turned into his animal, a rat, and faked his own death. Wormtail found a wizard family, the Weasleys, and lived with them for 12 years as a rat, hoping to hear if Voldemort was coming back. Over those 12 years, Sirius did not go insane while in Azkaban, unlike everybody else, because he knew he was innocent. And since that wasn't a happy thought, the Dementors couldn't take it from him, and since it was a thought connected with his identity, it helped him remember who he was and stay in his right mind. At the end of the 12 years, Mr. Weasley won a lot of money in some kind of lottery or drawing or something, and used the money to take his family on holiday to Egypt. Because of the lottery winning, the Daily Prophet did a story on the Weasleys and published a picture of the entire family, which included Wormtail as a rat. Sirius saw that picture in the newspaper and recognized Wormtail immediately. Sirius, being smart, knew Harry would be in danger at Hogwarts while Wormtail was that close to him. So he escaped from Azkaban as a dog and made his way to Hogwarts to kill Wormtail, not Harry, which explains why he was muttering he's at Hogwarts in his sleep. Now that is a lot of information, but almost all of it is necessary to explain what has been happening inside of this story that we've been reading so far, and almost all of it is botched. Dum da da dum da dum dum. We do learn that Lupin is a werewolf, but we don't know that he has been since he was a kid. Ever, really. It doesn't come up, I don't think. We also don't know that Dumbledore knew that, and the mystery around it is kind of gone. It feels unnecessarily thrown in, just kind of squeezed into the story for the sake of having some kind of a plot twist. I will admit that this is one mystery that Rowling didn't set up that great. She actually starts off pretty well, because when we first meet Lupin, he's asleep on the train in the middle of the day, and he looks like he had a rough night. If you check the lunar calendar for 1993, which is when this story is supposed to take place, a fact that Cuarón completely ignored, the night between August 31st and September 1st, which is the day the term starts, was a full moon. But then he doesn't miss a day of class for 2 months, and then again 2 months later, and he's ill on Christmas, but the full moon wasn't until December 28th. So she gets off the calendar a little bit, and there really isn't a mention of him being ill every single month, which is only a problem because Hermione says that that was the thing that clued her into the fact that he was a werewolf, and we just didn't get to see that. Even so, it's better than the movie, where this is all the mention that we get.
Suffice it to say that your professor finds himself incapable of teaching at the present time.
Werewolves?
Right after the holidays. For now, I need to rest.
And this funny line.
Out for a little walk. in the moonlight, are we?
Which is only funny in hindsight. Bogart does still turn into a moon, but that goes way too far in the other direction. I've heard someone say, and it may have been Dominic Noble, that this is an example of something that works in print, but not film. In print, you can just say that the Bogart turned into a silver orb, and the reader is still kind of in the dark on what that actually means. In film, though, it's kind of hard to make the moon not look like the moon. That being said, I don't think this is how you should handle that problem. And it's raining now. Sorry about the audio. Now, I'm not a professional filmmaker, but I think that there are better ways to handle this. Shoot it from a distance. You can make it kind of out of focus and a little blurry. You could shoot it from behind, so it's the dark side of the moon, and we wouldn't quite recognize it. Maybe abstract it a little bit, like the Bogart has trouble turning into a moon. Oh, and don't add clouds. Show it in slow motion, zoom in, and give it a musical sting. These suggestions come from an amateur, mind you. And this is just a weird complaint. It's in the book and the movie and most werewolf movies. To be honest, why do they always have the moment when the clouds roll back and reveal the full moon and then the transformation starts? It creates a question that's never been addressed. If they don't turn into a werewolf until they are directly in the moonlight, then why doesn't just staying inside keep them from transforming? Seems like a pretty easy solution. Hey, you want to go out to eat tonight, John? Well, sorry, I can't. It's a full moon tonight. Oh, yeah, I understand. Hey, if you want some company, we could just order in and hang out at your house. Well, that sounds great. I'll hook up the N64. Dum da da dum da dum dum. This is never mentioned at all. It's not that important, but it does answer some questions you might have, like why is there a tunnel to this building and why is the entrance under a vindictive tree? The book also gives hints to this aspect of the mystery with little things like saying that the Whomping Willow was planted the year that Lupin started at Hogwarts. And the Marauder's map shows a tunnel underneath the Whomping Willow, and that there's a knot that immobilizes the Whomping Willow. All of those facts are left out though, so nobody's wondering about them. But things like that give a payoff to the question of how does Sirius keep getting into the school, which in the movie he only does one time, so you're not wondering about it that much. A good mystery tells you the answer to a question, but you don't know that it told you the answer to the question. An amateur mystery gives you an answer and just tells you to accept it. A bad mystery gives you answers to questions it forgot to make you ask in the first place. The book is a good mystery. The movie's a bad one. Dum da da dum da dum dum. Again, we don't know why the tunnel exists. We don't know that Lupin was hidden there as a kid. We barely know the location we've gone to is supposed to be haunted because we're told like this.
It's meant to be the most haunted building in Britain. Did I mention that?
Twice.
That's a moment that sticks in your brain. And if you do remember that line, then you have this massive lack of payoff because there's a climax in the most haunted building in Britain, and nothing happens with no explanation why. That sounded a bit like Jack Skellington. And who would ever think, and why? Dum da da dum da dum dum. This is an infuriating one. Leaving this out fails to explain why Sirius can turn into a dog, why Wormtail can turn into a rat, and that it's weird that they can do that. If everyone can turn into animals, then you need to come up with an in-world reason why criminals can't just indefinitely hide from the government as animals. Sirius's identity as an animagus and all of its build-up is botched completely. Rowling makes it interesting by adding the concept of the Grim, a giant black dog that's a death omen. Harry keeps seeing it right before near-death experiences like being hit by the night bus or falling off of his broom. Side note, the book never says that Sirius turned into a giant black dog because of that, but you know that Sirius turned into a giant black dog because of that. Rowling gave us more reservations by making us uncertain about the giant black dog. It kept disappearing. Harry could just be imagining the death omen out of, paranoia, but he did see it before he knew that it was a death omen. But Trelawney saw it in the teacup. But Trelawney's a fraud, and no one else saw it in the teacup. But Ron believes it, but Hermione thinks that it's all bunk. But then everything comes to a head when he sees Crookshanks walking with the dog. Don't worry, we'll come back to Crookshanks. So it must be a real dog, but that makes it weirder because why is he seeing this giant dog everywhere? This gives a big payoff at the end when we find out that the dog is actually Sirius, who has been following Harry for months and not killing him. By contrast, this is all of the times that we see the Grim in the movie. Notice that 2 of those aren't a real dog. And the one time that it wasn't accompanied by a near-death experience. In the book, he's nearly run over by the night bus. But this is how we meet the night bus in the movie.
Welcome to the night bus.
It's not that dangerous looking. It's like Pierce's car wreck in Community. So when we see the Grim, right before we learn that it's Sirius, we haven't been wondering about this dog that we saw for 5 seconds, an hour and 23 minutes ago. I timed it. There's no payoff here because there's no accumulated debt. And it gives a legitimacy to all of the omens that Rowling unambiguously comes down on the side of them being stupid. Trelawney's reliance on them is the thing that makes her real prediction at the end shocking because we thought she was a giant fraud. Trelawney is actually treated way better in the movie than she is in the book, which happens a lot. Something in my throat. Also, just on an emotional level, not telling us that Harry's dad could turn into a stag takes all of the heart out of the reveal that his Patronus is a stag. It gives him a connection to James that he didn't know that he had, and it makes him feel like there's more of his father in him than he knew. They barely show it, though, so that's nice of them. Furthermore, we're only kind of told that Lupin, James, Sirius, and Wormtail were friends in school at all. We only get this.
He also killed one of their friends, Peter Pettigrew.
Little lump of a boy, always trailing after Sirius Black.
I remember him never let James and Sirius out of his sight.
That honestly doesn't sound like Wormtail was friends with anybody. He was just kind of there. And there's really nothing to imply that it was at school. We know that Sirius was Harry's godfather, so he and James must have been close at some point. But Lupin only talks about being friends with Lily.
You know, the very first time I saw you, Harry, I recognized you immediately. Not by your scar, by your eyes. They're your mother, Lily's. I knew her. Your mother was there for me at a time when no one else was. Not only was she a singularly gifted witch, she was also an uncommonly kind woman. She had a way of seeing the beauty in others, most especially when that person could not see it in themselves.
And he makes it sound like he didn't really like James.
Your father, James, on the other hand, he had a certain, shall we say, talent for trouble. Talent, rumor has it, he passed on to you.
All of that makes this line baffling.
Well, I just didn't think my dad would have wanted his two best friends to become killers.
Lupin was James's best friend. How did you come to that conclusion, Harry? This missing information leads us to the next point. Dum da da dum da dum dum. This one creates so many problems. Without this information, we don't know how Lupin knew that was a map, much less how to work it. Or why Sirius knew what it was.
That never lies.
Or why Snape thought it was full of dark magic and seemed to think that he knew what it was. This is some secret, unknown map that Fred and George found that no one else can read, but everyone who comes across it knows what it is. We also don't get the mystery answered of who Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs are. That absence gives us no explanation why, after this movie, Peter Pettigrew is referred to exclusively as Wormtail. The nicknames are never explained or even mentioned again after Harry reads them to Snape. Also related to this point, in the book, Lupin sees Pettigrew on the map with the kids going into the Shrieking Shack. He then follows them without closing the map. Then Snape goes into his office, sees Lupin on the map going into the same tunnel, and follows him. Without this knowledge, you have to wonder why they both went in there at all. I guess you could infer that Lupin did exactly what happened in the book, but you have no idea what Snape's doing there. This omission just opens a can of unanswered questions. Dum da da dum da dum dum. The Fidelius charm is never mentioned. Instead, they just say that Sirius told Voldemort where the Potters were. That's all. So it really could have been anyone. This one's less important, but it does hurt Sirius's character depth a little bit because it gets rid of the guilt that he's always felt over suggesting that Wormtail be the secret keeper. It also kind of gives Wormtail an out because if several people knew where the Potters were, then Voldemort just had to pick one and torture them. And Wormtail implies, without being rebutted, that that's what happened.
I didn't mean to. The Dark Lord, you've no idea the weapons he possesses.
And that makes Harry's disgust and Lupin and Sirius's desire to kill him seem pretty calloused. And it does give the implication that Wormtail had to fake his own death and go into hiding because the good guys would kill him for breaking under torture, which makes them seem like terrible people. I know the truth, and you know the truth, probably, but no one who hasn't read the book does. I have absolutely no footage to use here. There's nothing. So first off, the killing of 13 people with a single curse is never mentioned, which makes this line...
He's a murderous, raving lunatic.
Feel a little unearned. But more importantly, if he didn't kill 12 people when he faked his own death, it makes Wormtail not a terrible person. Just someone who was, again, afraid that his friends would kill him for breaking under torture. That makes you wonder if the good guys are the good guys way more than what Harry sees in the Pensive. It also makes it nonsensical why Wormtail would be turned over to the Dementors. Sirius was imprisoned for killing Wormtail, but in this version, Wormtail didn't kill anyone. So, is he being sent to prison for... again, revealing the Potter's location under torture. Wizard legal system is nuts. But I guess we already knew that from Fantastic Beasts. The movie also makes a baffling change to the order of events that either makes Sirius a terrible person or an idiot. I had never noticed it before this most recent review, but McGonagall says this.
Well, Peter Pettigrew tried to warn the Potters and might have managed to had he not run into an old friend, Sirius Black.
So Wormtail being killed by Sirius on his way to warn the Potters implies that Sirius killed Wormtail for betraying them before the Potters were killed. Which means that Sirius learned that Wormtail betrayed the Potters and decided to kill him instead of warning them. Okay, that is some messed up character assassination. Sirius was more concerned with revenge than his friend's safety. Why was this line added, and how did no one realize what it implied? The book has Sirius responsible for the Potters' deaths indirectly because he suggested Wormtail be the secret keeper. But this makes him directly responsible because he was too busy trying to kill the person who betrayed them to try to get them to safety. I don't even have anything to add to that. That's just insane. Dum da da dum da dum dum. Okay, so this one. In the book, it is very unlikely that you would ever figure this out because the Rogue Animagi thing is something that Rowling keeps from the reader until you find out that Peter could both turn into a rat and was still alive. But she did give you enough information so that you could say, oh, that makes sense when it all comes together at the end. The movies, however, yes, I'm going with plural here, give you nothing. Scabbers is seen one time in Philosopher's Stone, and I don't think he's ever even mentioned in Chamber of Secrets. In the Azkaban book, Rowling creates this side plot that keeps Scabbers at the forefront of your mind, and this is clever because it makes the twist seem less out of nowhere because it's not just this rat that's mentioned 1 or 2 times in the whole book. It's something that you've been thinking about pretty frequently. Now, when Harry first sees Scabbers in the book, he notices that he looks really rough. Then we find out that he has since the Egypt trip, which is when he found out that Sirius had escaped, so he's very stressed and terrified that Sirius is going to have his revenge on him. Ron takes him to an animal expert who is shocked to find out that Scabbers is almost 12 years old and tells him he's probably going to die soon and there's nothing that he can do. Then Crookshanks tries to eat him. Hermione buys Crookshanks, and the attempted murder continues. Scabbers keeps getting worse and worse until he finally fakes his own death so he can hide in the castle from Crookshanks. You may have noticed that was a long monologue with no film footage. Then he's found in Hagrid's hut, and things play out pretty similarly from there. Movie Azkaban, however, shows and talks about Scabbers here.
I'm warning you, Hermione. Keep that bloody beast of yours away from Scabbers, or I'll turn it into a tea cozy. Looks more like a pig with hair, if you ask me.
And later in the same scene,
even Scabbers enjoyed himself.
Which is the opposite of looking unhealthy in Egypt. We see him here. And here.
Sure.
He's mentioned here.
Scabbers is gone.
We kind of hear his feet in this scene. Then he reappears here and we see him regularly until the reveal. His missing toe...
He's missing a toe, isn't he?
...isn't mentioned before that moment. His failing health is never mentioned at all, and this is how we're told that he faked his own death.
Your cat killed him.
Don't worry, we will come back to that. There are no hints that there's anything even odd about Scabbers, which makes the reveal at the end feel random and unearned. It's like Han's villainous twist, but even more out of nowhere. That may be hyperbolic. Dum da da dum da dum dum. This doesn't explain it all, but it wouldn't make much sense if it was, because they never mention that Dementors drive people mad, so it's okay. Dum da da dum da dum dum. Okay, this one is kind of a big deal. It is the reason that Sirius broke out of prison, and since he's been there for 12 years without this detail, you have to wonder, why now? Well, I hope that you enjoy wondering, because you'll have to read the book to find out. We do get this shot. And that's all. If you haven't read the books, you could be excused for seeing this movie 10 or 12 times and never noticing that Scabbers is in that shot. 13 times or more? Unacceptable. While making this, I had to rewatch it because I didn't see him the first time. And I was looking for him. Even if you did notice, how would you know that that's how Sirius knew that Wormtail was still alive? Why would anyone assume that? It's not devastating to the story, but it does leave you wondering. Dum da da dum da dum dum. Okay, I'm again messing with Sirius's character. In the book, once Sirius discovers that Wormtail is still alive, he realizes that he has been listening for word of Voldemort coming back. And if he ever gets that, he is perfectly positioned to kill Harry and be welcomed back to the Death Stars as a hero. Death Stars. The movie has him escaping for nothing more than revenge. That's keeping with this version of Sirius's character, since revenge was more important to him than saving Lily and James' life, but it does make it more baffling why he didn't do it sooner. We're also never told how he escaped, but at least that wasn't set up as a mystery, so it's okay.
How did he escape?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? He's the first one that done it.
Except no one's ever broken out of Azkaban before, and...
Black could be anywhere. It's like trying to catch smoke. Like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands.
Why? By the way, who is this kid and why does he get so many ominous lines? He's like the Harry Potter version of Butch.
Boys kissing girls, girls kissing boys, and you know what else? We're all gonna like it!
He's credited as Boy 1, and he gets more lines than Neville. Furthermore, the he's at Hogwarts thing is never actually mentioned. People just assume that Sirius is after Harry. It seems logical, but give us something, geez. It's also fun to have the twist of Harry not being the he in question, and that's just missing now. Whew. Well, let's get into things not related to the info dump. How long is this video so far? Oh, good gosh. Well, let's talk about Crookshanks. Dum da da dum da dum dum. This is something that adaptations often suffer from. Not all, but a lot. A book will have something the filmmakers know the fans want to see, but they'll cut the reason why it was in the book in the first place. Crookshanks is one of those things. Book Crookshanks immediately recognizes that Scabbers isn't a rat and attacks him. Recognizes that Sirius isn't really a dog, but befriends him. Repeatedly tries to catch Scabbers/Wormtail to bring him to Sirius. Steals a list of Gryffindor passwords for Sirius. Accidentally drives a wedge between Ron and Hermione that has them not speaking for months because Ron thinks that he killed Scabbers and Hermione won't apologize or even acknowledge the possibility that it happened. After he's found, he chases Scabbers to dog form Sirius. Presses the knot on the Whomping Willow so Harry and Hermione can follow Ron and Sirius into the tunnel. Gets between Harry's wand and Sirius so that Harry can't kill Sirius. Is knocked unconscious trying to attack Wormtail before he escapes. Movie Crookshanks exists. He's seen here.
I'm warning you, Hermione. Keep that bloody beast of yours away from Scabbers, or I'll turn it into a tea cozy.
It's a cat, Ronald. What do you expect? It's in his nature.
Harry!
Harry!
Oh, has the cat been attacking Scabbers? Maybe. It could just be a warning, though, because if you have a rat and your friend gets a cat, it's important to lay down some rules. Also, we don't actually meet Crookshanks. He's just kind of here now. And he contributes absolutely nothing to the movie, so it honestly feels like Emma Watson just showed up on set and said, I think that Hermione should have a cat. And no one objected. Or Hermione's supposed to have had a cat this whole time, but he suddenly became relevant in this movie, so they had to add him back in and pretend that he'd always been there. But then remove the reason why he was relevant. Why does Ron look so scared here? The next part of the scene has Crookshanks and this moment.
You know the Egyptians used to worship cats?
Yeah, along with the dung beetles.
That felt necessary to the plot. Then we see his basket, but not him. It's right there if you can't see it. His last appearance is here, which you've seen a lot now. Prior to that cameo is probably the right word. He feels like a celebrity cat that wanted to appear in the movie, like Ed Sheeran in Game of Thrones. We have this conversation.
Beautiful day.
Gorgeous. Unless, of course, you've been ripped to pieces.
Oh no, Scabbers has been ripped to pieces? Shouldn't Ron be more upset about that?
Ronald has lost his rat.
Oh, he's just missing.
I haven't lost anything. Your cat killed him.
Rubbish.
You know, in the book, Ron found blood all over his sheets in the spot where Scabbers usually sleeps. But just missing's good too, I guess.
Harry, you've seen the way that bloodthirsty beast of hers was always lurking about.
No, Ron, I've never seen that. Crookshanks hasn't been seen for an hour.
And Scabbers is gone.
Well, maybe you should learn to take better care of your pets.
Your cat killed him.
Did not.
Didn't.
Well, Scabbers is just missing, I guess. I guess I'll just care about that as much as the characters seem to. Like, that much. Finally, he's mentioned here.
I think that means you owe someone an apology.
Right. Next time I see Crookshanks, I'll let him know.
Has Ron been complaining about this a lot? I haven't heard it mentioned again. Did that one conversation upset Hermione that much? She looks livid. Oh, and this moment that I completely forgot existed until I was editing. That was actually the first time you see Crookshanks, and he was chasing Scabbers, presumably. Why is Crookshanks in this movie at all? They could have just said Scabbers had gone missing. Dum da da dum da dum dum. Alright, let's talk about Hermione's time turner. This one is just kind of weirdly handled. We get this line from Ron.
That's not possible. Ancient runes is on the same time as divination. You have to be in 2 classes at once.
Then we get this moment.
Where did you come from?
Me? Been here all this time.
This one.
No one knows.
When did she get here?
And this one.
When did she come in? Did you see her come in?
And that's it for foreshadowing. First off, I just have to mention that they do the exact opposite of what happens in the book. In the book, Hermione keeps suddenly vanishing from places, but here she keeps appearing in classes. The book makes a little bit more sense to me because she's in the hallway, she travels back in time, and then she just goes to her next/previous class. In the movie, she's going to her next classroom and then traveling back from there. That just doesn't seem like how someone would handle the situation. Like, they'd have to know what seats were empty in the previous class. Anyway, in the book, it's a big mystery how Hermione is getting to her classes and why she keeps suddenly vanishing. Harry and Ron talk about it a lot, and they really have no idea what's going on. So when they find out that Hermione's been traveling back in time, it really helps the last mystery feel resolved. The movie feels like an amateur writer decided to use time travel at the end of a story and then realized he needed to put in some foreshadowing foreshadowing, then did just the bare minimum and called it a day. Also, just in terms of unanswered questions, why did Hermione get this thing? What was weird about her classes? Yes, I know we had that one line an hour ago about her having 2 classes at the same time. But is it normal to give students time turners to help them with their classes? That would be awesome. Do other students currently have them? And if not, why not? Why doesn't she have it again in the later movies? All of those questions could use some answering, and they are answered inside the book. Dum da da dum da dum dum. Why does Snape clearly hate Sirius so much?
Vengeance is sweet.
Vengeance for what? Even in the pensive in Order of the Phoenix, we only see James messing with him.
I hoped I'd be the one to catch you.
Why? They clearly know each other. What is their story?
Give me a reason. I beg you.
In the book, Sirius, James, and Lupin had a rivalry with Snape and hated each other inside of a very Malfoy versus Harry kind of way. Sirius got sick of Snape and tricked him into following Lupin into the tunnel. And he was almost killed by Werewolf Lupin, but James managed to save him. He was also madly in love, to a creepy degree, with the woman that James married. This leads to Snape hating Harry, too. That is a lot of A's in that sentence. But in the movies, we never really see Snape hating Harry or Lupin. We only see him hating Sirius, and only in this one scene, and we're never told why. In the confrontation scene, Snape is ready to subject Sirius to unthinkable torment, and he's going to enjoy it.
It's said to be nearly unbearable to witness, but I'll do my best.
He's much more toned down here than in the books, but his actions don't make any sense. Why does he hate Sirius this much? Also, why is Harry's default to disarm Snape rather than explain what's going on? In the book, it's because he's a sputtering psychopath who won't listen to Harry and Hermione when they try to explain. But in the movie, he's just confronting a wanted murderer that he has a vague history with. And Harry doesn't really know anything yet, except for they said that Peter Pettigrew is still alive. Makes Harry seem a little bit crazy. Dum da da dum da dum dum. Now all of that brings me to what seems like an odd or silly complaint, but in the context of everything I've listed, it's a much bigger deal. And it's all of the little scenes that they add. I think they spend less time reminding you that Scabbers exists than that the Whomping Willow moves. These scenes are perfectly fine, they're fun, and it's nice to see the characters just be themselves. We get some fun world building, and sometimes having scenes that don't just move the story along are great. Fun but pointless is perfectly acceptable. But when you cut enough things for someone to go on a 32-minute rant because you didn't have time to put them in the movie, maybe don't add pointless scenes that weren't in the book when that time could be used to make the movie make sense. Those are all the big things, I think. Let's do a quick succession of minor things. Yeah, we're still going. The first freaking scene in the movie. Here we have Harry breaking the law and using magic to read at night. This can be forgiven because the law against underage wizards using magic is really only a big point inside of Chamber of Secrets, and it's not brought up in that movie, so maybe we live in an alternative movie universe where that's not the case.
But, Hagrid, we're not allowed to do magic away from Hogwarts.
You're not allowed to do magic outside school. They won't let you back now. You've nowhere to go.
I broke the law. Underage wizards aren't allowed to use magic at home.
Well, that's awkward. Also, why is he having so much trouble with this spell?
Mischief managed. Nox.
And what the heck is Lumos Maxima? I don't think it's used anywhere else in either the movies or the books. Frankly, this entire scene should have been cut because it contributes nothing to the story and it actively contradicts the rules of the world.
Hogwarts will, until further notice, play host to the Dementors of Azkaban.
Why isn't Dumbledore upset about the Dementor's presence, Gambin? The Buckbeak scene is also a fun incident of breaking the world's rules in real quick succession.
First thing you want to know about hippogriffs is that they're very proud creatures, very easily offended. You do not want to insult a hippogriff. It may just be the last thing you ever do. Yeah, big brute, yeah.
You great ugly brute.
So don't insult a hippogriff. Hagrid insults a hippogriff. Malfoy gives the same insult. I guess adding ugly was just a step too far.
This class is ridiculous.
Why does Malfoy say that? In the book, he's constantly ragging on Lupin's dumpy clothes, but we don't see that here. And this is the first defense against the dark arts class, and he's talking about a monster. Seems like what you would expect to me.
What frightens you most of all?
Professor Snape.
Professor Snape.
Why is Neville scared of Snape? This actually doesn't make much sense in the movie world. You see, book Snape is a truly horrible person who is unnaturally cruel to all not Slytherins, but especially Hermione, Neville, and Harry. Movie Snape is strict and rude. He does this.
Mr. Potter, our new celebrity.
This.
That is the second time you've spoken out of turn, Miss Granger. Are you incapable of restraining yourself, or do you take pride in being an insufferable know-it-all?
This.
How extraordinarily like your father you are, Potter. He, too, was exceedingly arrogant, strutting about the castle.
More?
Why, you insolent little...
This happens.
It's said to be nearly unbearable to witness, but I'll do my best.
Whatever this is.
Oh!
And this.
No idea.
That is a far cry from the screaming, vindictive sociopath in the books. Why would he be anyone's greatest fear, especially Neville, who has no scenes with him in the entire series? It's no wonder everyone laughs.
Remarkable feat, don't you think? To enter Hogwarts Castle on one's own, completely undetected.
Quite remarkable, yeah.
Any theories on how he might have managed it?
Many, each as unlikely as the next.
Again, the mystery of how Sirius got into the castle. People who have read the book know it's because he knows the castle so well that he made a secret map of it. But you will never get that question answered by the movie.
Arresto momentum!
This is really annoying. We had an opportunity to see an absolutely furious Dumbledore. But Gambon decided to save that for a point in the series where his actions are labeled calm. Yeah, he's just the worst. This is how we learn about Buckbeak's sentencing.
How'd it go, Hagrid? The hearing?
The committee members took turns talking about why we were there.
Buckbeak's been sentenced to death.
What hearing? That comes out of nowhere. We've had no mention of it. We didn't know it could happen. Might happen. Any happens. We are oblivious. What committee? I don't know. I mean, I do know because I read the book.
Earlier on, it showed someone in the castle. Someone I know to be dead. Peter Pettigrew.
That's not possible.
Once Harry tells Lupin that he saw Pettigrew on the map, why isn't Lupin using the map to hunt down Pettigrew and prevent nearly the entire ending? That line shouldn't have been added. Also, this line is just badly written.
Someone I know to be dead.
What a load of rubbish.
Why is Hermione so annoyed with Trelawney? We don't know, because it's been a while since we saw this woman. Why does she so sarcastically suggest the Grim?
The Grim. Possibly.
In the book, it was because Trelawney has been predicting Harry's death non-stop for almost a year now, but in the movie it happened one time and was never mentioned again. She doesn't mention it here either. Again, Trelawney comes off looking better in the movie than the book. Why does Harry see Sirius in this crystal ball?
He will return tonight.
This prophecy is weirdly written.
Tonight, he who betrayed his friends whose heart rots with murder.
Heart rots with murder? Wormtail hasn't killed anyone in this version of the story.
Shall break free.
Break free? He's not being held captive here.
Innocent blood shall be spilt.
Innocent blood shall be spilt? Well, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are injured, I guess, but okay.
And servant and master shall be reunited once more.
Will they be reunited tonight, too? Because if so, Wormtail's ability to find Voldemort is amazing. And again, this is less shocking than in the books because Trelawney is less full of crap.
Where do you suppose this goes?
I have a hunch. I just hope I'm wrong.
Where does Harry think the tunnel is leading, and why is that concerning?
A Dementor's kiss. One can only imagine what that must be like to endure. It's said to be nearly unbearable to witness, but I'll do my best.
Dementor's kiss? What is that? It sounds horrible. Wow, Snape really hates Sirius. I wonder why. This is a personal complaint, but I've always hated the werewolf design. It just looks more like a rat than a wolf. In the book, there's something called the Wolfsbane Potion, which keeps a werewolf docile while he's transformed. Lupin has been taking this every full moon so that the students are safe from him. In the movie, this is all the mention that he gets.
Remus, my old friend. Have you taken your potion tonight?
What potion, and why does Sirius know about it? Also, just another broad werewolf complaint. Why are werewolves in stories always so bad at keeping up the lunar cycle? I don't know or care when the next full moon is, but it's not literally the most important thing in my life. This scene has two issues. With our knowledge at this point, what is this thing? Also, from a design standpoint, why would this be called a kiss? It's the same thing we've seen every time the Dementors have been near people, so what's the horrible thing that Snape referred to? And this part is baffling. In the books, we are constantly told that Harry looks just like his dad, and Harry thinks so too from the pictures that he's seen. But in this movie, James looks like this, and that doesn't really look like Radcliffe at all. Which could explain why no one says so before now.
You look so like your father.
In the entire series.
I expect you're tired of hearing this.
No, I don't think Harry's sick of hearing it because no one has ever said it before. Also, Harry sees this. Why does he think that's his dad? That figure is barely a person, much less something to strongly convince him that it's his father, because he is adamant about it later.
It was my dad who conjured the Patronus.
Harry, your dad's
Dead, I know. I'm just telling you what I saw. Don't worry. My dad will come. He'll conjure the Patronus. Any minute now. Right there. You'll see.
No one's coming.
Don't worry, he will. He will come.
Any minute, the Dementors are going to perform the kiss. They're going to suck out his soul.
Oh, that's what a Dementor's kiss is.
He's not really a rat.
Why is it that bright at 10:30 p.m.?
Is meaningless to those who've forgotten how to listen.
Dumbledore would never hurt one of his students. Freaking Gambon. Finally, all of the backstory to the firebolt is gone, so it being so awesome and the other students awing over it loses a lot of punch. And this is just a preference again, but I think the firebolt is hideous. It's supposed to be the sleekest, most polished, smooth broom in the world. It is the Ferrari of brooms. But this thing looks like Tim after the electric fence. So that's about it. Yep. This long, and I'm wrapping out with just... So that's about it. This is a bad adaptation and a bad movie. If you have a friend who hasn't read the books and doesn't like this movie at all, I think now you know why. For those of us who were fans, its badness was hidden because we were able to fill in the gaps with our book knowledge. And those gaps were surrounded by good acting, mostly, beautiful cinematography, and a gorgeous soundtrack. But all of that is pointless if the story isn't coherent. Beyond making no sense, though, a lot of these problems show why the movies are generally bad adaptations. A good adaptation can have changes, remove subplots, even add things, as long as it gets a few fundamental things right. Stay true to the characters, stay true to the story, and stay true to the spirit of the book that you're adapting. A lot of these characters are not the same characters in the book. Snape, Trelawney, Sirius, and Dumbledore have all been drastically changed to the point of not being the same people. I mean, Sirius, you have to think about it, but they accidentally made him a psychopath. The story, again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's essentially the same. But to the spirit, like I originally said, the Harry Potter stories are fantasies, but at their core, they're mysteries. Sometimes not the best told mysteries, but mysteries nonetheless. And the movies are not mysteries. They don't give you the clues about the answers, and a lot of times they don't make you wonder about the answers in the first place. If you are adapting a mystery, and you have the reveal at the end, but you have removed every reason why it's a reveal, you've failed. And from this point, all the movies fail the spirit in the exact same way. I'm not trying to convince you to hate this movie. If you like it, that's fine. I'm not trying to begrudge you that fact. Heck, I used to. Though I do hope that maybe if enough people are dissatisfied with these movies, you'll all want an animated Harry Potter TV series as much as I do. Get on it, HBO Max. I'll do Goblet of Fire at some point. It'll be a while, though. I have kids and a job, and I don't want to rewatch it. That one will be a lot angrier. Newell. TTFN. Dum da da dum da dum dum.